So I've just finished lime rendering this room internally, and I just thought I'd have a quick do a quick video on it. And being it's my first time using lime render, just to make some observations. I haven't bothered showing you how to do it because there's lots and lots of good videos on the internet showing you how to do lime render, and they're far better at it than I am. So I'll leave it to them. But so this is the finished result anyway. I'll start with the corners. I've already done a quick video on this, but for the corners I use this corner trowel here, and because I don't really have the skill to fix the angle beading properly, so I bought one of these trowels instead. There's also, as well, in the old part of the house, we've got some rounded corners around the windows and doors, and I just thought it'd be nice to echo that in this room, which turned out was quite a good idea because, as I say, I tried to put some of the angle beadings up, but they're very, very difficult to fix neatly. And here we go. I'll just try and get a view down this corner. So you can see, use a trowel to make a rounded edge, and that's quite good when you've got a nice long run to run the trowel properly. It gets a little less neat in the corners. So how we've been doing it is, first of all, we mix up the render. I've got a video on that you can have a look at if you like. And then bring it in the house. It's quite heavy. Tip it on a spot. This is hard now. This is from yesterday. I haven't cleaned up yet. Tip it on the spot, and then you get a smoothing trowel like this one and a hawk, and you scoop some up, put it on the hawk. Now here, because I'm just working on, quite close to where the spot is, I just put one scoop on the hawk and then one trowel's worth, and then after you've got it on the trowel, then you put it on the wall. So all of this render in here is less than 10 millimeters thick, probably, because we've got a stop bead which runs around the bottom. I've got a piece of stop bead to show you. So there it is out there. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a bit like angle bead, but it's got an L shape on the bottom instead of having a 90-degree cross section. And I saw this in a restaurant we went to, and thought it looked quite good because it's like you get a bit of a line at the bottom to kind of, and also they didn't use a skirting board, so that's another corner cut, which I didn't fancy doing. So yes, we fixed the stop bead along the bottom, and then we've run up with the lime mortar, and very thin layer, one coat of not two, and just very thin as we could get it really. Now you can see some side effects of doing that. We've got this grinning, I think you call it, on the wall, where you can just about make out where the concrete blocks are behind it. Now that was quite prevalent all over this section here, but as this top section has cured more fully, it started to fade away, and I think perhaps what's happening is the lime render takes perhaps more moisture out of the joints in the blockwork, and so it's taking a bit longer to cure in those places, or it's still a bit damp or something. Anyway, I don't really know. Some things to point out. So after you put it on the wall with the trowel, then you get it as flat as you can using the smoothing trowel, and then I've got one of these things here, which is a sponge float, or nowadays people call them a rubber float, which some people say is a new thing and other people say is not a new thing. So this one here is a make, and it is Raffina or Raffira. Is that an N or an R? Raffina. Which sounds Italian, doesn't it? Yeah, that was quite a good thing, because when you're, if you've got a nice long float like this one, when you're floating up you can see the marks there in the wall where we floated it up, and when you move it like this, because it's nice and long, it's like a good reference point. Well, the longer the thing you're using to float with, the smoother your wall or flatter your wall is going to be. So that was quite a good investment, that, I think. Quite very hard work using a large float like that over a long wall, and to be honest, I had some help I haven't asked for much help doing this, but I got Dad to come down to help me do this long wall, because that would have been an absolute beast to do in a day on yourself. It's quite a long, even to do, the easiest bit of rendering was, not the easiest, but the shortest to do was this bit around the door here, because there was less to do. But it took all day, because you might put it on in the morning, but then you've got to wait for it to go off to do the various stages. So you slop it all on, then you smooth it over as best you can with a smoothing trowel. Then you might, while it's still quite wet, you might float it up with a sponge float, and then you have to wait maybe an hour or two, and then you go over it again with the sponge float to while it's a bit harder. And then last of all, after another couple of hours, you use the sponge just to like polish off any little imperfections and things, although there are plenty of those left. And so, you know, by the time you've done all those different stages, the whole day's gone. So even to do a little patch, you'll be on it all day because of the drying time. But that's one of the good things about it, because if you're using the normal pink plaster, which we used around the door here, this pink plaster here, which is the normal sort of stuff that people use internally in houses, then that's all done and dusted, like pretty much dry in 40 minutes or something. And so, you know, a small patch like this I could just about manage, but doing a wall like that I'd probably get in a right pickle, because it goes off so quickly, and also it's a completely different sort of technique. So this lime render was like very nice to work with, very plastic, lovely, sort of easy beginner's way to cover a wall, and I probably would use it again despite it taking a while. The only thing I would do differently is I would doing the underside of these lintels was very, very difficult, because obviously the mortar doesn't like hanging upside down on things. It will do it to a certain extent. But what I would have done is got some expanded metal lathe of the right thickness, and run it along the underside of the lintel, because we had all kinds of trouble. I mean, this one here was a beast to do under here, and I had, as you can see, I had two patches here where after putting it all up initially, it fell off, and so I had to leave it to the next day, because every time you fiddle around with it, you run the risk of knocking another bit off. So I left it to the next day, tidying it around the edge of the bit which had fallen out as best I could. But then you see it's a different mix, and you can see where I've done it, because it doesn't match up. So yeah, definitely if you're going to do this, I would get a roll of expanded metal lathe of the right width, and I fix it over the entire bottom of the lintel, maybe put 2 layers on just so it grips really well, and then when you're putting it up, hopefully it won't fall off. Another problem areas I had on this opening over here was was this little area here along the front, because whilst you can run the lathe up to the edge, have I got a piece of that to show you? Expanded metal lathe. So what it looks like is, no, it's all been rendered over, Will. Yeah, so basically, see the angle bead out here again. So it's the bit with all the holes in going along the top here. That's what expanded metal lard looks like. Just that. You can buy it in a roll, whatever width you like, and then using some tin snips, you just cut it to the size you want. These tin snips here, you cut it to the size you want, and then screw it up using some little screws and a screwdriver. Preferably get all ready the day before, so because it does take all day to do any amount of line rendering, because if you put it on the morning, you might not be finished till 8-9 o'clock at night. And I found that, you know, whilst it dries quickly on when you're rendering on a concrete block, it takes ages to dry on the bottom of the lintel, much longer, maybe 4 or 6 hours. And here on the side we had some cavity closers, plastic ones, and because the mortar had the moisture in the render had nowhere to go, because it was bounded at the back by these plastic cavity closers. I mean, these here, they didn't go off the day we did them. I had to sponge them up the day after. So that's another thing. I probably wouldn't have used the plastic cavity closers. Although if you have got them, and if you have got the cavity closers and you're going to line render on them, what we did, I drilled quite a lot of holes in them, you know, about 50 or so holes, and then just put a thin coat of lime render over the cavity closer, and then the next day when you come to do it, there's a bit of you've roughed it up so the lime render sticks better because it's got a thin coat on there already, and also the moisture from the layer you put on the top is sucked into the dry stuff, and so you can sponge it up a bit quicker. So we did that after the first day. We did that for all the cavity closers. Window ledges, just use some scaffold boards there. How do we fix those down? We've got brackets along the front which have now been rendered over, and then propped it up at the back with some bits of wood, and then I just shot the underside full of expanding foam, and I put a couple of concrete blocks on top to make sure the expanding foam didn't push it out of plumb. And I round the edges of the sockets. When I was chipping those out, even though I was being very careful, it stays crumbly for quite a few days after you've done it line render. So just go real easy when you're chipping out around the sockets, because it's quite easy to take a bit too much. And just with all the other patching, you know, you can see there's a bit where I've patched here where a bit came out, and you've got a different colour now. So that's not ideal. In terms of finishing it off, I think I'll do like a thin lime wash using some of the bagged lime powder we've got. Apparently if you mix it up to a cream consistency, then you can just paint it on, and apparently it fills in all these drying cracks as well, which is good, because we had our electrical cables rebaited into the wall, and where that lime render is a bit thicker there, where it's had to go into the rebate, you can see you've got some cracking, which kind of highlights where the rebating was carried out, and creates a line which you don't really want. So that's it. I think that's pretty much everything I learnt whilst doing it. On the wall plate around the top, I had some thin expanded metal lathe which I stapled on with a staple gun all the way around the top. And in fact, when I ran out of the expanded metal lathe, I just got the staple gun and fired a whole bunch of staples into the wood, just leaving them a little bit proud, and the render gripped to that quite nicely. So that's something else you could do if you're in a fix. So yeah, there you go. That was my first time doing it, and I'm reasonably happy with the results. There are a few scruffy bits which I'm not so happy with, but then I suppose, you know, being quite a low skill level, this sort of thing, that was to be expected. And no doubt, by the time we've had a few meals in here, and especially after I've had a few glasses of wine, it probably won't look so bad at all, will it? So there you go. I hope that's been useful. Like I say, I'm not professional, but there might be some observations in there for someone looking to have a first go at this, which might be of use to you. Okay, thanks very much. Cheerio, bye.